right, let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, gender nonconforming and trans deities, thank you for tuning in to the Hoodoisie. That's right. Sit back, relax, grab a bottle, or if you're on them 12 steps, a delicious non-alcoholic beverage, and come take in this live stream off your LCD screen and get radical with the Hoodoisie. That's right. Chicago's favorite and the country's only radical underground live and live stream news show is keeping it radical in the time of Corona. And we are doing that with Southside Weekly and bringing you Pandemic Issues. Pandemic Issues is a weekly series where we give you the stories and the analysis that big local corporate media will not. And we do it by giving perspective with the people that are living perspective. Let's give it up for tonight's show. You could like and give us some heart and like emojis, motherfuckers. Thank you very much. I'm your co-host and creator of the Hoodoisie, Ricardo Gamboa or Ricardo Gamboa. Pronouns are they, them, sexy, bad bitch, revolutionary, natural blonde, and I haven't shaved in 2 months. And I'm joined tonight by my co-host. Give it up, Jackie.
Hi, this is Jackie Serrato, editor-in-chief of the Southside Weekly from Little Village, and my pronouns are she, her.
And
what the fuck is up? It's Preston, audience manager for Justice Watch. Here to have a good time. Let's go.
Cool. Tonight we are talking essential resistance, and we are talking about essential workers and the movements that they got popping off with two frontline fighters. Tonight on the show, from Warehouse Workers for Justice and the Southside Englewood native, we got Bobby Frierson, and with the Gig Workers Collective, that the Chicago Tribune, everyone's favorite problematic newspaper that's arguably racist and classist, termed the chief agitator of the Instacart strike. Let's give it up for Matthew Tejas. Let's show them some love. Woo! How we doing, everybody? Good?
Good, right?
Good, great.
Cool. So let's get started. I think one of the things that is like really interesting is, Bobby, I want to kind of just kick it off and like hear even, you know, some of your journeys to being organizing and to this fight. So Bobby, I want to start with you because I think it's so interesting because you didn't just, you know, wake up or go and major in activism in college and then show up to do some organizing, right? Yeah. You're someone that came to the work through the work, as a worker and warehouse work as a warehouse worker yourself. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, I got into organizing just from fighting in the workplace. I worked in a factory out in Bolingbrook, MTIL. I watched the forklift drivers walk out and it crumbled the factory. It like sent the company. Like it drove them fucking crazy, ape shit. And they gave the forklift drivers a $5 raise. So I came back to work the next day. We maybe had 100 people. I told them, bro, we need to do something. You know, I had been in contact with Warehouse Workers for Justice, and they had been educating me on my rights in the workplace. And they ultimately guided us to a union, which was the UE. And, you know, we had 100 workers there. So we put together an organizing drive. We had 81 workers signed up on cards. 3 days before the election, the company walked around passing out checks. And 2 days before the election, they fired me. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, took my case to the NLRB.
Yeah.
You know, the NLRB issued a 10J injunction where the company had to recognize the union and bring me back without back pay. You know, 10J injunctions are like fucking unicorns out here. You never really see them happen.
What is that?
A 10J injunction is where the company had to recognize the union without an election, and they had to bring me back with back pay without retaliation.
Wow. Yeah. So you won that shit. You were like, that's right. I guess it's coming back.
Yeah,
and then what happened?
We got into a tough organizing fight with the workers. I had ultimately moved on to canvas for the fight for 15 and ultimately organized. But just that, it was still a fight, you know. The company was still fighting back against the workers. You know, they still had them working in shitty conditions, still not respecting them, you know, still treating them bad.
And so I'm thinking about, yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you describe some of these conditions? I know I used to work in the warehouse at Walmart and then at Amazon too, but paint a picture for the folks at home around, like.
Man, be ready for this. Hope you guys ready for this. We used to wash the trays that Walmart get the produce from the farm to the store. So what we did was wash the trays. The trays would go through a washer and they would come out. They would go through a washer and come out dry at the other end. Keep in mind, we dealt with water. We used to work in fucking 2 feet of water at times. You know, a foot and a half of water, like water up to your knee. Like, and the drainage system was so bad that sometimes sewage from the shitter would bag up into the floors. It's real bad. I mean, we had electrical wires running through this water. It's like they didn't give a shit about us.
And even like I mean, like right now, we know Amazon is in the news. Like, what are those warehouse working conditions like?
I currently don't work in Amazon or never have, but through conversations with workers, I mean, it's not the safest place to work. I mean, the rate of work is ridiculous. They wrote you work so fast that you can't practice social distance. It's just not the best place to work. I mean, they paint this picture like this is an Amazonian dream, but through conversation with workers, I mean, the shit's turned out to be an Amazonian nightmare.
And then I think Matt, you started with Instagram they're both evil though, right? Let's be real.
Right. I do that all the time.
You started with Instacart in 2016, right?
Late 2015, after a previous career workplace injury. It was just supposed to be a means to an end, quick little thing, but ended up 5 years later.
And you started that. Then you were with that company as it kind of experienced a lot of growth, right? And I mean, what did you witness around that growth, like as a shopper for them?
Yeah, about end of 2015, I was one of the first people hired in Chicago. They had a small corporate team. I think there was only like 7,000 shoppers nationwide. Now they're scrambling to try and hit 1 million different shopper contractors. And after Amazon, the company of the year, bought Whole Foods, everyone started scrambling to look for an alternative to fight Amazon and stay afloat because they know Amazon's just going to take over everything. So Instacart actually exploded pretty quickly in 2016 and quickly grew to like over 100,000 shoppers. And now there's all these different Facebook groups and things. And, ever since they started that huge growth period, it's been nothing but bad for the workers, the frontline workers, the shoppers, not only the contractors, but the in-store employees who are like stuck to a certain store, like shop orders all day and just put them on a shelf. Every single decision that Instacart has made in 2016 has been for the detriment of the workers.
Yeah. And so how did you get involved with the Gig Workers Collective through there? Because I know that's also someone you're involved with. Yeah.
So once they grew, all these different Facebook groups started popping up. We have one locally here in Chicago called Instacart Personal Shoppers Lounge Chicago. It's got like over 800 people now. When I first joined that one, there was maybe like 80 people, 70. And there's a larger group called Facebook Shoppers National. That's where we started. That's where we all found each other. There's different islands in the country. Like me, I'm from Chicago. I was shopping downtown in the Loop at the time. Now I'm out in the western suburbs, northwest suburbs. And I met Vanessa Bain through there. She's out in Palo Alto in Northern California. And Sarah Clark is also from the same area, but I've never actually met them in real life. We just met in a Facebook group because we were some of the loudest, most pissed off voices. And we were just like screaming about these business decisions that Instacart was making. The first of which was in the fall of 2016 around Thanksgiving. They said that they were going to remove tipping from the platform. So we were just like, you're not taking our fucking tips. Obviously, we can't trust you to redistribute them to us in higher pay. So we started talking in back channels. We started with Google Drive, and to this day, we use a lot of Twitter DMs, which we should probably change because there was an outage yesterday. But a lot of texting, a lot of phone calls. We've just pretty much moved on all the different social media platforms for communication and engagement, reaching out and just getting all the information out there. Here's evidence that Instacart is stealing or lowering pay or forcing you to work unprotected or sending out garbage ass protection units, kits that are horrible and probably making people even more unsafe than they already are without anything. It's been a wild ride. You mentioned Bobby, didn't come from training, neither did I. I didn't plan to do this. I hate bullies. And, I found two really strong women who actually have a larger team of women behind them. And I mean, they're doing so many things that I don't even know about. And they include me on a lot of stuff. And it's just amazing to watch what they've been able to do, as women and minorities in the activism world. It's very hard for them just in general, but to actually be heard, it was amazing to hear their strong voices, and I'm grateful to be part of it. The foundations were laid back then in the Facebook groups, but just only recently created the actual Gig Workers Collective and kind of, I guess grew up, evolved a little bit.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I'm kind of interested in, right, is that kind of background is cool to hear. But like it's like a completely different moment right now, right? Like once the kind of like the pandemic hit, and what we've seen kind of in the past couple of weeks is just like stuff really pop off, right? We've seen kind of
Yeah,
Amazon
it's
workers,
insanity.
Amazon workers standing up for their rights, standing up for their lives. Same thing with with the personal shoppers of Instacart and other kind of those similar platforms. Can each of you like take a moment to kind of walk us through those moments? I know, Bobby, when we're talking about like warehouse workers right now, Amazon might be most prominent in the in the news, but there's a lot of warehouses where shit is going down. And when we were talking, on the other day, when we were talking yesterday, one of the things that you brought up was the warehouse out in DeKalb. Can you break down like some of the stuff that's been going on out there even?
Yeah, like the warehouse out in the cab, it's called Cushionaire, but it's kind of different from most of the fights that's going on because these workers aren't asking for the place to be shut down. The company is forcing these workers to take lesser wages. They forced them to either sign a reduction of wage form or be fired, and the shit just ain't right. You know what I mean? Especially not in these times, and the time where everybody's struggling, you're telling these people, these essential workers, to struggle even more. The shit's not right, man. What they should be doing during this time for those essential workers is giving them hazard pay, but yet instead they're taking money out of their mouths, and it's just not right.
Damn. And then
Bobby, can you
Yeah.
Bobby, can you give us a better idea of what are the wages in warehouses like the one in the Cub, and how many hours do workers typically work per week?
I mean, right now today, wages in warehouses are close to minimal, if not minimum wages. And I mean, you're forced to work 40 hours, and in some places you're forced to work over 40 hours. Like the overtime is fucking mandatory. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
That's how they get away with a lot of stuff is they call that flexibility. Like you choose your own hours and stuff. And it's just a lie. Like you got to work 70 hours just to pay your bills. It's bullshit.
And then, so like recently here, like closer to home in Chicago, right? The Amazon strike kind of popped off. Can you talk to us a little bit about, because I know you were in conversation with some of those workers and, and have, been organizing around warehouses and that type of stuff. How, what actually kind of, got that popping off, and what does that look like?
Well, I mean, before the pandemic, Amazon workers were having problems, just the pandemic just brought light to their situation. I mean, these workers have already been working. Like, I mean, the shit is the closest thing to slavery. I mean, the work and a minimum wage is danged over the head, and the shit's controlled by fear. It's either you do it or you're fired, and it's just not right. They're forcing these workers to work in unsafe conditions at unsafe paces, and they're firing them if they don't.
I do want to mention that we did invite several Amazon workers to come on the show, but we just couldn't coordinate a time where everybody could, come together. Like you mentioned, the work schedule can be a little crazy for them. They're also busy organizing themselves, so they couldn't come on the show, but they know that it's happening, and they're happy that they have our support.
I mean, my thing is like, it's just so crazy. Like someone like Jeff Bezos is making like, not only like is made like ridiculously rich, right? I think like 40 billion is something like his worth, right? But even in this moment of people dying is making record profits. And I think originally when you look at all the reports, part of what the workers were just asking is like, just clean this shit up. Right? Like we'll come to work, just clean this up. And it was kind of a refusal to even do that.
It's the bare minimum. They're asking for the bare minimum and not even getting that. It's garbage and it's unacceptable. And you see in the media, like the mainstream media, like Jeff Bezos hasn't taken a pay raise since he started. He only makes $81,000 a year. Okay, but he owns a bunch of stock, and that's got a ton of value to it. And he's got a huge yacht. I don't care what he makes for being like founder of Amazon. He's in a yacht right now, and he's in the sea, and he's safe, and people are dying, and it's not okay.
Yeah, and then like I mean, so Bob, we talked about Amazon a little bit. We talked about Cushioneer. What are some of the other warehouses where there's kind of workers mobilizing around this?
Man, it's happening at every warehouse right now. Workers are mobilizing at every warehouse. If I start naming names of warehouses where workers are mobilizing, I'll be naming names for hours. But every warehouse worker, not even just every warehouse worker, every essential worker, every frontline worker, every worker needs to be coming together and fighting these companies right now because they're sitting on all this wealth, and it's because of us. They're holding this shit to their heart, and they need to let it go.
Specifically, there's actually a lot of good stuff happening in New York right now with Chris Smalls. He's leading a lot of stuff, helping out with the May Day strike. And then also Minnesota, a lot of good stuff happened recently. There's a puppy butt right here. But the Minnesota workers, they just struck like Wildcat randomly to get someone rehired that was fired this week, and Amazon rehired the person, and they got what they wanted out of that, like quick action. So you're seeing a lot more like that stuff kind of popping up, like quick little actions, and like solidarity, and like, you know, protecting the person standing next to you in that factory, which is amazing. You know, that's some of the silver lining coming out of this hardship is people and workers standing together and protecting each other.
Definitely shout out to Woosen and Make the Road New York for all the great work they're doing.
Yep.
Definitely shout out, and those workers, shout those out.
Yeah, and then Mac, dude, can you talk to us? I don't know why, bro. I just want to call you Mateo all the time and just like Mexican your name all the time.
Hey, you can. It's you know, it used to be Tellez, but I don't know. My dad changed it. My mom's Swedish, blonde hair, blue eyes. My dad's like a Mexican, so I don't know. I'm weird.
Good.
Call me Mateo.
That's I'm feeling our ancestral connection up in this vision
right
now.
Yeah, you can always feel it. It's in all of us. We got that. Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah. So what happened? Can you talk to us about how the Instacart strike precipitated, right? Because that's got to be a completely different route of how that happened.
Yeah. You know, it's different because we don't have like a warehouse to go to. We don't have a break room. We don't have like a parking lot. And we've been striking for 4 years off and on. Every 6 months, it seems like we're organizing a strike because Instacart makes business decisions like every 6 months. And every time we have to strike to say, we don't want this to happen. You're saying one thing and you're giving another. You always do it. The game never changes with them. So actually, I had stepped away a little bit, you know, just for mental health a couple of times over the years because this shit's exhausting and it depresses you to no end when, you know, you're fighting your ass off and these billion-dollar companies are not really doing anything. They're pretending to listen to you and then they gaslight you in the press and you know, you build up relationships over time and you know what they're saying behind the curtain. You know that they hate your guts and they're doing a lot of things just to retaliate against you and speaking out. So I actually was stepped away for a moment and I was getting ready to actually launch my own personal shopping during this so I can like make my own rules, make my own rates, find my own clients, help out the immunocompromised and the elderly, which is what like I think Instacart should have started as, which it kind of did, but it can be that if they weren't so greedy. So I was just about to open up my laptop to like kind of do a spring launch for that business in my old neighborhood in Des Plaines. And I got a call from Sarah Clark of Big Workers Collective. And she's like, hey, Instacart's doing this thing. We want to strike. Are you in? I'm like, yeah, obviously, I'm always down to strike Instacart. So I closed the laptop and put out the phone, pulled out Twitter, started announcing it. That's kind of where I do most of my damage. And we've been striking ever since. And we encourage anyone who can afford to do it to continue to do it. If you can't, but you know, with all the things that have been going on and just all of the fuck ups that Instacart have like done openly, like sending out terrible t-shirt masks to people and little fish tank strip thermometers and saying that they're doing a good thing, like it's making our job so much easier because people are joining the platform in droves but immediately getting soured on it because of all the work involved and the little pay. And now we have all these algorithmic hackers like stealing high-paying batches for people that like pay people that like have access to this, and good long-time honest shoppers are just sitting in parking lots not seeing any batches. So now there's so many things working against everybody that it's just heartbreaking. A lot of it came from the Amazon game, like that you could like grab bricks with like a grabber and all this like tech stuff, and it's above a lot of people's heads. They just signed up, they want to grocery shop, they want to help their neighbors, they want to make some money doing it, and it's becoming impossible, and people are getting frustrated, and you can see it in the stores. You can see the desperation on people's faces. So when you have people that have such little worth that maybe they feel like they have nothing left, it becomes a lot easier to kind of engage them and activate them and just build them back up. Like, you're a human being, you know, like there's so many great movies that use that, you know, Network, you're a human being, God damn it. Like, your life has value. Like, people need to hear that shit right now because it's fucking true. Like, life seems so cheap right now. You know, we're hearing all this bullshit, you know, open up the states, do this and that. And we can't let that happen. We just can't. So now is the time to like look at the person you've never talked to in the warehouse and see how they're feeling. Check in on.
So I want to get back to this. I want to go back. You were talking about like there's retaliation. And I want to know like what does that look like outside of termination, and how do you even organize or get people on board despite this type of retaliation? I think, Bobby, you can jump in after Matt in regards to like what does retaliation look like, you know, to pick up anything he leaves out.
So I definitely, personally, since I sued Instacart successfully in 2016 and we managed to win like $4.2 million in a spread amongst the shoppers, lawyers took most of that. We got a fraction of what Instacart stole back from us. But with that came a little bit of notoriety, and we built all these relationships with like really good tech journalists that moved on into the mainstream media. So we get like a lot of stuff kind of that way. So like, unfortunately, you know, a lot of people might want to do what I do, and it might not be safe for them. There is retaliation for other people, but I think if Instacart like deactivated me or whatever, like they know that like 10 of me would rise up, or I would just get more pissed off. I don't think I could be any more pissed off. But for the average person, like we always try and provide like connections to journalists to get stories out, and we always offer anonymity and any alternatives in case we do inadvertently like, you know, cause someone to get deactivated if they want to like, you know, do what we're doing. You know, there's other options. You know, I'll get you set up with like a company like Dumpling that's doing it the right way, or you know, we can crowdsource some salaries and stuff. We've been passing money along to each other on Twitter and stuff like that. But you know, there is a huge support system, man. And going to gigworkerscollective.org is a great place to start. There's a whole sidebar of COVID-19 resources as far as like, you know, getting loans and grants and payments and different people that you can call if people are like fucking with you or getting evictions and stuff. So it's pretty gross. It looks like just random and anonymous deactivations. You just wake up one morning and you don't have access to your app. So you lost your source of income because you're not an employee. You can't really fight back.
Right.
And so it's all automated. It's all done by an algorithm. And I think Bobby will agree from the stories he's heard that, you know, it all comes from Amazon. It comes from the Jeff Bezos playbook. There's no innovation in Silicon Valley or Seattle. Like, they all just copy off of each other and repackage it as their own. And
it's just that there's a big ass reference for how to oppress people, and they're like, "Yo, we just got to keep on doing that same shit."
Yeah, let's just repackage it as something else and put bells and whistles on it and make it cheap for the people, and they'll use it, and they are, and it sucks.
Bobby, how about you? Oh wait, unmute, Bob.
I'm mute.
Yeah.
Okay, retaliation in the warehouse kind of looks different, but yet the same. I mean, they stick you in the shitty part of the warehouse, the job that you're physically incapable of doing, or they tell you there's no overtime available for you this week, or they just cut your hours. I mean, it's so bad to the point where they force you out of the workplace without saying you're fired. They force you to be fired. You know what I mean? And it's bad.
Yeah, I'm thinking about one of the things I keep on thinking about, right, is this idea of like who are essential workers, right? And when, you know, Jackie yesterday mentioned a study and she shared it between, you know, me, her, and Charles, you know, that was recently done, where it's over half of the essential workers in the Chicago metropolitan area are low income, you know, people of color that we're talking about, right? Who already are kind of vulnerable. And it's like this kind of like weird, sick ass shit this country does, where it, you know, does stuff like kill Native people and then builds a monument for them in Lincoln Park, right? Like, or it says, you know, that or it recruits, you know, it recruits kind of young men of color to go fight wars on the front line and say that they're heroes.
We were just talking about today how like the CIA was sending Martin Luther King Jr. like suicide letters to tell him to kill himself, and then they give him like a day. Like, it's like, come on. Like,
right. And I think that, you know, and I don't think that's dissimilar from what's going on with essential workers here, right? Where all of a sudden we're calling these people that just months ago we were calling unskilled laborers, right? Unskilled workers are all of a sudden now essential. You know, and we're
watch how quickly people go back to that. Watch how quickly.
The essential work comes with minimal pay and zero health benefits. You know what I mean? And now you guys start asking yourself: Are these workers essential workers or essential sacrifices? You know what I mean? Like what the fuck?
Expendable.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If they die, we'll just hire more.
I mean, and I think that's one of the things I'm thinking about, right? Because like so these people so a lot of essential workers are like at an intersection, right? Of kind of vulnerability, right? And how, like, what can essential workers do, right? To start fighting for better, safer working conditions right now? Like, what would you say some of the first steps are toward that?
I'm thinking what they need to do right now is tell their stories. I mean, because the world just doesn't know. I mean, they had this shit behind these thick concrete factory walls. Like the world just don't know what go on back there. Like the shit modern day slavery. Like they work the fuck out of you. Like your body physically can't work that long and that many years. Like no one's gonna work for 20 years at Amazon and retire. Your body is just not gonna allow you to do it.
Right,
you know what I mean? They
have like one of the highest turnovers ever. I heard that it's like if someone is there for longer than 6 months, they call them like a veteran even.
Exactly.
Yeah, that shit crazy. I'm gonna chime in. I remember when I used to work at Amazon, and so I worked there for about 3 weeks, and I only had like 10, maybe 15 hours a week, but I was driving like an hour or like at least 30 minutes out the city, right near what's that, Rosemont, and they have a facility near that way, and I used to go out there because it wasn't no work I couldn't get a job, and so they'll start you off at like Bobby said, minimum wage, and then they'll put your ass in the fucking freezer at the beginning of your shift, and they're gonna work you. Like, you're gonna work, but for it to be deemed essential, I just think it's crazy if we don't have the essential pay to go with it.
I mean, it's also just crazy because it wasn't too many decades ago. You know, it was only a couple decades ago where you could still kind of make an honorable living as a warehouse worker, right? Like and then it's kind of like that shit got broken up by like the rise of these corporations and the neoliberal capitalists, like, you know, unbridled greed.
You know, growing up, I can remember watching Archie Bunker, you know, talking about working in the warehouse, how it was a great job, but looking now, like, warehouse work is a struggle. Like, it used to be a great job, but right now, I mean, you better off fucking flipping burgers than packing boxes.
So I think it's all connected to this technological advancements we've had since like the 80s. You know, they started dismantling unions, they started dismantling and kind of trying to shame activists, and we had this rise of this like hyper capitalist kind of framework that we call it today hustle culture, and it's a lie, you know. So we bought into that. And prior to COVID-19, you gave some people the benefit of the doubt that they were just too fucking busy to listen to these stories. Now there's no excuse. Now you're gonna sit down, you should be at home, listen to these fucking stories. You know, there's no excuse now. And what I said earlier, I don't know if anyone caught it, but you know, watch how fast we go back to low skill after this is over, if it's over. You know, like, I'm planning for 18 months in this. You know, so even 18 months of conditioning into like the average consumer that, you know, we are essential. There's no such thing as a low skill job. When this is eventually all over, just like 9/11 or anything else, like, watch how quickly it goes back to this me first and a gimme society, and you're shitting on the bag boy at your local Jewel and, you know, telling him to learn the code. You know,
well, or actually. The one thing I think about with like 9/11, right, is like it didn't go back to normal after 9/11. Actually, what we got was like a hyper kind of patriotic, you know what I mean? A country that was more racist afterwards.
And then we had an exponential growth in stripping away our actual like freedoms and surveillance, and we're going to see that again now. And that's why you were talking about the turnover rates. You know, your upper manager at Amazon warehouse probably has only worked there for like 6 months, and like they use all of these surveillance tactics, and like people, the executives at Amazon and Instacart and all the people that are in charge of the hiring of these different gigs, they're salivating right now because everyone is unemployed right now, and it's going to get even worse as the future comes towards us. And all these people, if they can't go back to their old job, they're going to open up their phone and click on Instacart, and they're signing up, and it's already happening. They're flocking to Amazon, even though that there's terrible stories out there. They know Amazon is a dangerous job, but they feel like, and they might not have any other fucking options. So like, they know they're in a trap. It's a systemic fucking trap, and it's not new. It's just shit that's been going on for decades. It's just, again, got a different name and a different face, different logo on it.
Yeah, Matthew, I think one of the things I'm thinking about right now too, or Mateo, one of the things I'm thinking about right now, right, is this idea of you know, I think you mentioned Dumpling, and those are services that I haven't heard, right? So when we're talking about something like Instacart, right, like how I mean, that's actually part of what happens. Like there's a demand, right? And we know there are people that, you know, disabled people, elderly people like me that have chronic respiratory issues, right? That rely on, you know, those type of services. What are kind of like the ones, like you said, that are doing it right? Or even like, what are other best practices that could help? I think yesterday when we were having our pre-meeting, you were talking about tipping even. What are kind of some of those things that could,
So if I had it my way in a dream world, the federal government would be subsidizing all grocery deliveries from every single store ever, and would basically put all grocery stores as dark, and would pay people like me a living wage, and those like me who want to go out and do this with proper protection, delivering groceries to anyone who clicks on apps, or anyone who has a friend that can help them. If we're talking about able-bodied folks versus people who don't necessarily have access to these things, that would be an ideal world. All the grocery stores go kind of dark to the average asshole who doesn't believe in the pandemic. He's walking in there with no mask on, potentially infecting everyone. There's another new case over at Aldi in Morton Grove right now. All the Skokie Mariano's had cases in them in the last month and a half. It's dangerous, man. So that would be an ideal world, like where, like, you know, grocery delivery and groceries in general, you can't really make a lot of money off of it because grocery stores don't make a lot of money off of selling you groceries. So they can't pay someone I mean, they can. There's just a lot of things in the way to like pay someone like me like $20 an hour to do this. You got to supplement with a lot of tips and stuff like that. But it is possible. And if people can just do a little bit of research, there is a lot of people signing up to a company I helped kind of shape a little bit. I didn't do any of the hard work. I just know the guys that founded it after meeting them in a Facebook group. And, you know, help consult with that. And it's a great service. It allows me to find my own clients and market myself to people that can't go to the grocery stores like yourself that, you know, are high risk. And, you know, I'm able-bodied. I have that privilege and I want to use it to help as many people as possible. And we're signing up new shoppers every day. It's a completely different thing. It's not an algorithm kind of just burping out orders at you and you're throwing them at someone's door. It's like a real actual service where I talk to my clients. I know their diets. I know what to do. They know what to do. So a little research, you can find some stores that even have their own in-house delivery that isn't powered by Instacart. Be careful. We've ruined Instacart's name. So if you go to like Costco's app, it's actually powered by Instacart, or like Publix down in Florida, it's actually powered by Instacart. Really look at the fine print. You have time. You're at home. Read the fine print. Or you know, just get online and research, or like even start your own thing. You know, like the idea is good. You know, I'm doing thankfully really well right now because I have access to the platform, and you know, Instacart's super failing right now. I haven't had to market it all, so when people can't get an order with Instacart, they look for alternatives and they find me, and I'm a way better alternative in my opinion. Instacart can't afford me. They could never pay me what I'm worth to do it as well as I do. I fell in love with grocery shopping over the last 5 years. It's really something that I like doing.
That's your kink.
And, yeah, that's my thing. I like food. I like helping people. You know, it's like that job interview. What's your biggest downfall? I like helping people. But no, it's fun, man. Like being in the grocery stores and being out there. You know, and if you're working downtown doing something like Instacart, you have access to like all these buildings and stuff. So it's pretty cool. But also, you know, they don't pay, so it's really not worth it. As far as tipping best practice, just tip cash if you can.
My favorite thing. Oh, tip cash, you were saying? Yeah, right?
Yeah, because we found a bunch of times where like the tips get stolen from the customer going through the app to me. Like he'll tip $20, I'll see like $4 of it, and there's no way to ever hold them accountable because they're private companies, and there's no way to like access any of their data, so they can just steal from you at will. Yeah,
Bobby, you unmuted. You got something?
No, I was just unmuting. I'm sorry.
Something that Amazon organizers were saying was they were essentially asking customers not to order non-essential items. So basically keep it at what you and your family need to survive through this pandemic, because people are bored right now and they're literally ordering, you know, whatever they can or whatever they want just to keep themselves busy. They're ordering like, you know, jumping houses and, you know, all sorts of, you know, things that don't matter. So we just have to keep in mind of the strain that we're putting on these warehouse workers. We often don't think about, you know, how our shopping patterns affect, you know, other people. And another thing we can do is just go directly to the company that we're trying to buy from. Usually they'll have a website. Usually they'll be selling online, so you can just go directly to the company and order from them directly.
Yeah,
definitely.
But honestly, you know, if Amazon cared, they wouldn't even sell a shit. They still got the shit on there for sale. Like they don't care about products being non-essential. Like all they care about is profits. They don't give a fuck about people. It's all about any way they can line their pocket. Like all they got to do is on their website stop selling the shit. But they choose to still sell it.
But if you want to support a local business, go to shop.chicagotrueborn.com. It's TRUBORN. It's a great art gallery, local, right there on Chicago Avenue. Order some awesome art. It's all local Chicago street artists. I ordered something this morning actually, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yo, because I stopped doing like Amazon everything right now, right? Like we've been going to like the grocery store, you know, like me and like, you know, my partner, right? But I think one of the things I'm thinking, actually one of the things I'm really thinking about is I like when Bobby said we got to listen to worker stories, and then Matt said, yeah, like because you got the time, you're just at home, and it makes me wish that like we can make people binge watch Oppression and be like, now what, motherfuckers? But I think one of the things I'm thinking about, Bobby, is, you know, speaking of stories, is like, you know, even when we talked yesterday and we were all, you know, on a Zoom call preparing for this, and just hearing the story about like you kind of going to the table and being offered back pay and saying, I actually don't want that. Right.
Yeah,
and like, and that, like, because what I keep on thinking about is like there are so many, my mom worked at a factory. She was a printer making the menu strips for, that are at McDonald's. I've worked in immigrant communities. I'm Mexican, right? A lot of family members have worked those kind of like manual labor jobs in factories and stuff like that, and people are scared. Right. And not only scared, it's like, I'm sure there are so many essential workers that are not like, yo, I'm just being a hero out here. They're like, I got to pay rent. I got to put food in my kid's mouth. Right. And so when I think about that, like, there's so much kind of fear when you were going to that table, kind of like what went through your mind. And then what steps did you take to like center all workers? And like, what advice would you give workers that are ready to agitate?
What I always kept in my mind was the fight was never about me. It was always about us. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the back pay would have made me all right, but my coworkers, and I mean, I spent more time with those people than I did with my actual family. So my family members that I work with would have still fucking been struggling. It wouldn't have been right. Like, there's no I in team. There's no I in we. So we all stuck together and we rode the shit out.
Mm-hmm. And then what was your, like, when you encounter, even just as someone that's an organizer now, when you encounter people that are, fearful or scared, how do you galvanize them to know that there's another option, that there's possibility?
I really just tell them my story. And I also, tell them stories of their coworkers, because in every place, there's always a strong worker. There's always somebody outspoken that never gets fired. And workers need to realize, like, this shit is a scare tactic. Like, it's time to step up. It's time to speak out. It's time to do something about the shit. Because as long as we stand back and do nothing, we're going to get nothing. It's time to start telling our story, start letting the world know how our fight really is, because people just don't know. You know what I mean? So while everybody's sitting back and listening, we need to tell these people about this fight. They need to see what it is like for a warehouse worker, for an essential worker, not a frontline worker, but the workers that's considered essential. Essential work, the essential worker, the shit don't come with hazard pay. The frontline worker gets hazard pay, the essential worker gets $2. You telling these workers that their life's worth $8 more a day, the shit's bullshit. So we need to come together. We need to start stepping up. We need to start speaking. And I mean, and if it gets as bad as this, we need to start occupying these factories. We do the work. We know how to do this shit. We need to start taking them over.
Hey, Bobby, there's some workers who are under the impression that they need to be part of a recognized union in their workplace in order to organize. Is that true? Can workers just come together and do something about it?
That's not what workers need. Workers don't need a union. I mean, the shit cool, yeah, and dandy, but workers need to come together for themselves. A union is two workers together fighting for something. That's what a union is.
Right.
Workers make up.
What we're doing at Instacart is technically illegal. We can't be a union, and we're still doing it.
Yeah, a union isn't a big name. The name isn't going to save you. These workers need to come together and save themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Matthew, I mean, speaking of workers, right? There's this term that I never heard it until you said it, because I'm ignorant as fuck. But what is an algorithmic? You said an algorithmic employee or an algorithmic employer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I probably just kind of botched it. Algorithmic, like boss is kind of the term I derived that from. Like, if your boss is an algorithm, you're the person that's an algorithmic employee. I don't take credit for it, but it's basically, like what Amazon does to their warehouses: automation, algorithms, mathematical equations. Who's all of them? The thing that the algorithm that dictates, like, Instacart pay and who gets what orders, or who's doing how many Amazon boxes, moved in the warehouse, or what Uber rides you get. It's all dictated by a machine learning algorithm that was created by a team of engineers, usually out of like Stanford University, that basically trying to please their boss, and their boss wants them to maximize the amount of work they can get out of somebody for the lowest amount of cost to the company. And a lot of times these algorithms like try and push to like absolute zero pay. We've actually caught them with Instacart doing that in November of 2018, where someone was like paid negative cents or like $1 to do like 2 hours of work. And we went to the press and we had them actually had to code in a bottoming out limit of $7. Otherwise that robot would try and pay us nothing. So it's basically when just a mathematical equation dictates your life, your day, how you feel, how much money you're going to make. At any moment, a human can go in there and kind of tinker with stuff and say, oh, Matt's made $70 today. That's his cap. Boom, no more orders for him. And your local manager can go to this laptop and just hit a button and turn it on. If you're being lippy in a Facebook group, there's like moles in all the Facebook groups of like these like corporate bootlicking like middle managers that think by like spying in Facebook groups or telling on people they're gonna like become a CEO, and it's just not gonna happen for them. And like they'll like deactivate you out of Facebook from what you're saying on Facebook, or like you'll say that you did this thing that like helped your day, but technically was against contract with Instacart, but no one was hurt, and you'll get deactivated like 6 months later for it because they actually like deploy robots called scrapers into Facebook groups looking for keywords like tipping or theft or organize or labor or union, and they'll Facebook allows this. Instacart pays Facebook to access private groups, scrape out their data, and then give it to a team to sift through and see who's agitating, who's organizing, what do we have to look out for. And Amazon does it too, because we know that Whole Foods is doing it currently, as is Trader Joe's. They're monitoring agitators, activists. They're trying to stamp it out before it happens. And like Bobby said, you got me all jacked up. Like we can't be silenced, Get your story out.
And just to know something, I'm not here to downplay unions, but I'm just saying workers should believe in themselves. You know what I mean? Like you need to believe in yourself. You need to believe in the fight, because the union doesn't go to the fight with you every day. The worker goes to the fight.
I don't want to throw our organizing or our group under the bus, but we're all independent contractors technically. We're not employees of these gigs like Uber drivers or other things. Like it's actually illegal for us to kind of organize, and we got nothing to lose. We're doing it anyway. We have been. If they're gonna sue us, what are they gonna take? My dog? Like try. Like if you got nothing to lose, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
I love that
as long as you're not hurting people.
That puppy ass in the middle of the frame. When it came in, it reminded me of that one video of like that little girl strutting into like her dad's interview with the BBC. That video back in the day.
Fella, you want to go viral? You don't want to go viral, but I fell off the bed. She almost fell.
I think one of the things I'm thinking about right now, right, where we're almost at time. So like Bobby, Matt, what are kind of like some final thoughts or kind of things that you want people to like look out for or think about, or events that any of you all have coming up that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Well, I would like Bobby to finish because he's got a lot of passion.
Definitely.
Well, that's gonna resonate with me for forever. So like for Instacart, you can go to gigworkerscollective.org, and also a lot of the up-to-date stuff will be on Medium. Vanessa and Sarah, they write a lot of stuff up there for updates and actions and evidence of what's going on. So you can search like Google Medium Instacart, and it'll take you, or Gig Workers Collective, it'll take you to all of our blog posts. And do research, try and find other services. Check out Dumpling, do a zip code search. Maybe I'll deliver your groceries if you're in Chicago. And that's about it. Just listen to the stories, like Bobby said. And definitely thanks for having me and getting the word out. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we loved having you. We're gonna once we get this live show back, y'all are coming back. That because we're gonna.
Yeah, it sounds fun, man. It sounds fun.
And things, things we have coming up. Just through conversations with workers, we found out that a lot of blacks and browns are exploited because of their backgrounds. So I have an upcoming virtual expungement workshop. It's May 19th at 11 a.m. You can find more about it at follow our Facebook page, Warehouse Works for Justice, on Facebook. You can actually reach out to me if you want to know more about the expungement workshop at bobby@warehouseworker.org, or you can call me personally at 224-392-7896. We're also Friday having a virtual concert. Come out, it's going to be broadcasted live on Facebook. Join, vibe, hear some good music, and also it's going to be a lot of worker testimonials throughout the presentation. Hear these worker stories, hear the fight and the struggle of a worker. Come out and learn more.
Yeah, I mean, I still want us to talk tomorrow about how we could kind of get some of those worker stories out there. We have some people that do awesome media for us. Alejandro Reyes, one of our documenters, is the person that used the footage that kind of blew up and helped kind of, draw and catapult into national attention the bombing of Little Village is what I keep on referring to it, the Hilco demolition of the plant out there. And for everyone out there, we're going to be sharing all throughout the week and throughout next week until the events come, the events with Warehouse Workers with Justice, as well as the May Day event that Matthew was talking about as well. They're also going to be shared in the comments of this video. They're probably there right now already. I haven't checked because I'm talking to you all. But we're going to move on to some announcements and updates. Matthew and Bobby, please stick around. And
just one more thing, tell me. Anybody dealing with anything in their workplace, like any warehouse worker dealing with any issue in the workplace, you can reach out to us and we'll help you the best way we can. You know, we'll educate you about your rights in the workplace. You know, if you guys want to ultimately form a union, we can refer you guys to a union that can suit you guys' needs, you know, but, you know, we're here to help. So any worker going through anything at this time, at this pandemic, reach out to us. You know, we're here to help.
Yeah, thanks, man. Let's give it
Friday,
up.
May 1st. Don't
Friday,
order
May
shit.
1st.
No Instacart, no Amazon.
That's
Friday,
right.
May 1st.
Yep.
Don't
Let's give it
order
up
anything.
for Matthew and Bobby. Give us some likes and some hearts. We're going to move on to some announcements. I want to announce really quickly that the Hoodoisie is super happy to welcome Yasmin Zacarias Mikael as our new editorial producer. That's, you know, bringing her radical expertise that ranges from theater and journalism to kind of help develop our shows and script them. We also want to give a shout out to Janie Pichelle, the auntie of the Shy Nations Youth Council and a Native activist. Who is the shit and has our social media popping. Let's take it to Jackie for some more updates on shit that's going down.
Hey everyone, so I'm just gonna give a few updates that may or may not be related to the topic of this show. But I do want to say that Amazon does plan to build another site in the south side of Chicago. I believe it's 104th and Woodlawn. And they were asking for the city to subsidize them initially. I don't think that went through city council, but I think it's important to keep our eye on that development, whether they're going to hire locally and how they plan on treating their workers. Earlier, Ricardo mentioned a study that was done by the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning that looked at different job sectors that are essential during the pandemic, like manufacturing, transportation, food supply, and so on. And I just want to throw out some numbers from that study. Latino workers are especially overrepresented in construction at 39%, food service occupations at 38%. Black workers are most overrepresented in healthcare support at 36%, and protective service jobs at 29%. So Chicago area essential workers, as we know, live in greater concentration along the south and west sides and nearby suburbs. And I just want to show you really quick this letter that a lot of essential workers are receiving. I folded it because I'm trying to keep personal information private, but essentially a lot of essential workers are receiving a letter in their workplace that allows them to commute to and from work, so that if they get pulled over by authorities, by the police, they're able to show this letter that demonstrates that they are an essential worker and that they're allowed to go back and forth between their jobs and their homes. So if you're an essential worker and you haven't received a letter from your employer, I think it's important that you ask for one. Other factories that have closed down, El Milagro Tortilleria, this is the tortilla shop that is actually very close to the Amazon warehouse on Western and 28th. And it has shut down for 2 weeks after one employee died of COVID-19, and at least 4 others were diagnosed with the virus. These are not the storefronts on 26th Street or on 18th Street. This is a factory that's on Western. Also, the Tootsie Roll factory on Cicero Avenue by Ford City, they reported that at least 18 employees were sick. And so they're considering shutting down the plant so that they can do a thorough cleaning. Also, there was a strike at United Steel. This was yesterday, which is another company that is on Cicero Avenue and employs mostly Mexican workers. And they're refusing to provide masks, to respect social distancing guidelines. And there's already been 1 dead and several people who are sick at United Steel. And a lot of us have grown up in these areas that are industrial or post-industrial, but we just don't know it. Some of these streets are, Cicero Avenue, Western Avenue, and other big avenues that tend to have a lot of industry, and they're in our backyards. We're just not, paying attention. So I think it's important for us to pay attention to what's happening with the industry close to where we live. The Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection is encouraging people to call 311 and report any companies or any employers who are not following social distancing guidelines. They can actually get fined I think like $10,000 for not respecting the stay-at-home order or some other of the pandemic guidelines. And then finally, the city is putting out another COVID-related lottery. I'm sure you all heard of the lottery for the rent that went out last month. Well, this one is for small businesses, businesses that have 4 employees or less, and which make $200,000 in profits or less. The application is open until Monday, and it's going to take the form of a lottery. So it's, so it's supposed to be random. You can find more information at chicago.gov/recovery grant. But most importantly is for everyone to support their local businesses, locally owned, immigrant owned, and owned by people of color. It's important to support them during this time because they're hanging on by a thread. So thanks.
I love that we got to say, because when it's with the city, supposedly supposed to be random, because we know they're just always doing shady shit.
And
right.
just to throw another thing out there, I got I maybe have 1,000 masks coming in so any essential warehouse worker who's not giving masks at work, you can reach out to us and we'll try our best to provide you with masks.
Yo, thank you so much for that, Bobby. We'll actually share that as well this week. We got to the ending, and I'm going to give you all the Rona reflection for this episode. At any other time, we've referred to laborers like warehouse workers, delivery persons, and those in the checkout lines of grocery stores as unskilled workers. Now government deems them essential workers. But if they were so essential, why aren't those in power doing everything they can to protect their lives? If our business and politicians really believe they're heroes and are so grateful like they keep saying they are, why aren't they paying them for their invaluable service during this fatally threatening time? The reality is that those people in power do know these people's work is essential. They think their labor is essential, but not their lives. And when Chicago's essential workers are disproportionately low-income people of color, it's no coincidence CEOs like Amazon's Jeff Bezos or Instacart's Apurva Mehta and reps like Lori Lightfoot are treating them as necessary sacrifices. But these people's lives should not be expendable just so any Karen or Ken Griffin can get a waffle maker or gummies delivered to their house without having to put their own lives at risk. This disregard of labor should not be surprising. This country has a history of working people, particularly people of color, to the bone. They will work us to death. The kidnapped and enslaved African whose work was essential for accumulating wealth and building this country were treated as disposable and as socially dead, only valued for their bodies and work. The same brown, undocumented immigrants whose exploited and cheap labor is essential to increase profit margins and ensure a U.S. standard of living are the same ones Obama's and now Trump's administration was and is now still hunting, detaining, and deporting. An irony during this whole pandemic is while undocumented workers still can't get papers, they were issued essential worker letters to harvest the food we'll eat during this time. These essential workers are just asking for safer conditions and better pay for risking their lives to do labor we cannot live without, and they are being refused this by men like Bezos or Mehta who are making record profits off of sickness and off of death. Warehouse workers, low-wage workers hustling in neighborhoods like Little Village or in places like Joliet are indispensable to Jeff Bezos making billions. But they don't just build Jeff Bezos' house or comfort and security. Look around your home. Every mass-produced object in it, furniture, appliances, and other commodities, was handled by warehouse workers at one point. The food in your fridge would not be there if it were not for essential workers, those on migrant farms, those in factories, or those trafficking your groceries. We owe them, not the other way around. Much of the rhetoric for support of these essential workers, like those striking in warehouses or against Instacart, wants to remind you that these people are not just essential workers. They're people. You'll frequently hear shit like they have families. This language attempts to appeal for support by asking listeners to recognize essential workers' humanity. I am not going to fucking do that and try to prove these workers' living worth and humanity. In this fight, they're not the ones that need to prove their humanity. You do. We all do. And we do it with solidarity. Don't support Amazon, Whole Foods, Instacart, Target, or anyone else essential workers say we shouldn't. Follow and stand behind the workers who are fighting for their lives so we can live ours a little more safely and conveniently. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Hoodoisie tonight. I want to give an extra thank you one more time to Matthew Tejas and Bobby Frierson. Thank you so much for showing up on our show. Give some love to my co-hosts, Charles and Jackie. The Hoodoisie will be back next week. We're going to be having some city council members. We'll have Alderman Byron Sicho Lopez and Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor and Rosana Rodriguez as we get an inside look on what's happening on city at city council. Thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. And thank you all for joining me tonight. Thanks so much.